Hello, YouTube Live. How are you again? Promised you I would have an interview with the next charity I was raising money for, which will be, well, we don't know yet. I haven't got a date booked yet, but I'm talking and sorting it out, hopefully later in the year. But I'm here with Pete Lewin. Nice to see you, mate.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming to Markfield.
It's okay, mate.
And making the journey. So, can you tell the podcast who you are and the YouTube, who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing everything for?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Pete Lewin from Pete Lewin Newfoundlands. It's a non-profit organisation I set up 8 years ago to help people struggling with mental health by accident, really. I have Newfoundland dogs. We take people swimming with them in open water. A lot of the people we deal with are military veterans, emergency services staff, and people who just want fun swims, really. We've done quite a bit of work to help the heroes, and we did some swims for Blesma last year. So what it entails is we get people to come, as a group of probably 6 people. We get them all geared up into wetsuits, dry suits, buoyancy aids. We supply everything. The dog has buoyancy aid on as well. We take people swimming in the water now. We never ask questions why they come. It's just a case of we're taking people away from things that are bothering them for a few hours and just make the day a little bit more of a different sort of a day for them. We've been doing it, like I say, about 7 or 8 years. It started off by accident. We used to do real rescue training with the dogs, and we tried to get used for real rescue work in this country. Unfortunately, nobody was interested. The answers were, we've got boats, why do we need dogs? Which, yeah, certain things I certainly wouldn't put them into. I wouldn't put them in flood water because of all the toxins and all the pollution and stuff, because if it's going to affect us, it'll affect my dogs. But anyway, one of the girls that used to help me when we went into schools doing water safety workshops for primary schools, she was late getting to us for an event a couple of years before we set this up. And she told me a story about looking at taking an overdose the morning of a day of an event that she promised to come to. She decided then that she'd had enough of life and she was going to commit suicide. But then she sort of talked herself out of it and came and swam with us, luckily. And the way she described being in the water with the dogs was they look into your soul when they're swimming out to you. They don't judge, they don't criticise, they don't condemn. All they want to do is help you and get you back to shore. And we just thought, well, if it works for that lady, will it work for other people? So then we started sort of going to little country shows and sort of advertising what we do or what we intend to do. So we only got 2 or 3 people in a year for the first 2 or 3 years. We still swam the dogs because it's what we do as well. We enjoy being out there in the water with the dogs.
Yeah.
So we then sort of got approached by the NHS PCT to do a swim with the veterans. So we did that, and they put out a press release, and ITV and BBC News came. So we was on the TV with it. Somebody from the Kennel Club had seen what we did, and this was all around lockdown time. So there was lots of sort of months where things didn't happen. Anyway, after a few months, we got a letter back from the Kennel Club asking if we'd like to go to the or be put in for the finals for the Hero Dog of the Year at Crufts. And then thankfully if you say it that way, or just brilliant sort of thing that we did, and we won it. The video they made for the TV to promote what we did was just amazing. I use it to this day because it's on YouTube, and yeah, so it's an amazing thing to do, mate.
Could you tell the podcast a bit about your paramedic career? A little bit, just a description, because we haven't got a long time, so you've got things to go off and do, mate.
Yeah.
So is there anything you could say about that?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I was years ago. I was in the building trade, and I was a plasterer. And anyway, I got ripped off, I suppose you call it.
Yeah.
2 jobs, and I just thought I'm going to look for something else, and for a different career. And I didn't fancy being a lorry driver or working in a factory.
No.
Anyway, 3 years later, my daughter, who unfortunately passed away last September 23. She'd seen a job advertised for non-emergency ambulance staff, and she says, and I won't use the word she says, not on air,
No.
but she said, you can talk rubbish all day. She said, you'd be good at that. So I applied. I got in it, and 29 years later, I'm still on the ambulance service. I started on patient transport for 2 years, 18 months as a sort of high dependency patient transport.
Yeah.
Then ambulance technician for a few years, and I went from a paramedic, and I got that, and I think I've been a paramedic now 22 years, something like that, 20 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and I've been on a specialist team with the ambulance service called the Hazardous Area Response Team, so HART, and I was on there for a few years. The travelling was getting a bit much because it's based in Mansfield, and I was travelling every day, so with having the dogs, it still needed walking.
Yeah, I understand.
It just made it really difficult. And some nights I was getting home and I don't remember how I got home from work, so I just thought, you know what, it's not worth the risk. Although the job was okay and it was a nice job. Well, say a nice job, it was.
It wasn't an easy job.
So then I went back into division and working on a fast response car, which I did before I did the heart thing. And I've been on, I'm semi-retired now. I just do Saturday, Sundays for a bit longer. So I'm sort of 67 now, so I'm looking at some point in the near future is sort of knocking it down on there a little bit and just perhaps doing 1 day a week instead of the 2, and then go from there.
Are you thinking of doing any more projects with the dogs this year? Is there anything big upcoming you can tell everybody that's listening? Because obviously, guys, I'm going to be raising money for Pete and the dogs, which, like I just told you, will be later in the year sometime. Yeah. But is there anything that you could tell people that if they're going to watch, like family and relations and that? Yeah, well, at the minute we've got a swim coming up in beginning of June for Help the Heroes. Last July we did a swim for them, and we took a guy that brain injury and paralysed, and we took him in the water with the dogs, and very rewarding, really nice thing to do. Well, it is, yeah. It's lovely. That's why I do my charity like I do. Yeah, and then we got, so hopefully 3rd of June, they're just checking on that they can get facilities for us. And then we're going to be doing that in June. And then June the 20th, we're doing a swim with a charity, an MND charity, taking, I think, 5 or 6 patients with MND swimming with the dogs to give them sort of, that experience. So we're looking forward to that as well. I mean, we don't do this lightly. Checking people that are paralysed with brain injury, and another guy on that same day had a stroke and he was paralysed on the right side. We don't do this easily. This is something that I wouldn't even attempt if it wasn't for the fact that I am a paramedic with a team of medics that help me in the water. And for it to happen, I need to have a big team with me. Yeah, to make it safe. So you couldn't do that on your own. It's too much, mate. You couldn't do it on your own. And people who've not had the experience of working with, in our sort of services, it would be very difficult to
to achieve and to understand people of those with those injuries and disabilities. So I'm very proud to be a paramedic, which allows me then to be very proud of doing what we do with
your charity.
With the charity and that way, the non-profit. But yeah, it's just very rewarding as to what we do.
And before I tell you just a bit about what my charity doing before we end it, I normally ask everyone that comes on my podcast what their big goal for the next 2 years is. And so it's normally a difficult question that a lot of people on my podcast can never really, like Martin Belloc, they can never really answer it correctly. But for you, what would your goal for the next 2 years be? What's your big thing? What are you hoping to get out of the next 2 years?
Well, we've just retired the 2 old boys, Storm and Sonar. Have been our dependable dogs for the last 7 years, 8 years, since we've been doing it. They're both 11 now, and they're both really tired, so they're having a rest. My hopes for the next 2 years is just to carry on doing what we're doing and help as many people as we can. We're looking at Walker here. He's a superb swimmer. We've got Ralph at home, who's not quite so good. He's a little bit shy, taking his feet off the ground in the water at the minute.
Yeah.
And the wife said I'm not allowed to have any more dogs, but now and then she's just said that I can actually look at getting a rehome so we can continue our work, which is important to me. So the next 2 years, the biggest goal is carrying on and doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard question, that, because
it's just Martin Bell. I didn't quite know what to tell him because of all his health issues in the past, and with him being on the radio for so long and only being able to do pantomime. Yeah. He had so many other things he wanted to do, but he was a pantomime dame for 32 years at Loughborough and Leicester, and where he works on the radio only allowed him to have that time off to do the pantomime, so he had no other time. So he had no time to do anything else. Yeah. So now he's got all this other freedom. He's doing his podcast for the Curve and different things. Yeah. So he had his freedom to do that, you see. But it's easy. You answered it quite easy there. Yeah. Normally people don't. No. On my podcast.
And I find it just rewarding with what we're doing. You know, at some point I shall finish with the ambulance service, but I'll still be doing something.
You'll still take volunteer jobs and stuff.
And I'll still probably work for different bits and bobs. I teach a bit of first aid as well, so
which is very good. Yeah, it needs showing, that does.
Yeah, so I can actually turn my hand to a few things. So a bit of teaching first aid, whether I do it through the business, the charity, or whether I do it for different companies or whatever. That's something that
it'll be what you decide at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and how much I need to feed these things and keep these going and looking after my van and stuff. So I do have a guy that helps me out. It's a company called Perfect Glass, and funnily enough, the guy who runs it, his name's Mark Lewin. So
hey, that works, doesn't it? That works. I like that. That actually works.
But he's not. Well, we're not. We are related somewhere down the line.
You must be.
but we don't know where. But he's a lovely guy and he helps us out. And so Ralph, our dog Ralph, he paid off towards him. So he's known as Perfect Ralph, as in Perfect Glass. So, yeah.
So I'll just quickly give you a brief thing about the charity, because obviously I'm raising money for you, so you have to know a bit about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't know why I'm doing it. So I've got autism. I've told my podcast several times on YouTube and on my normal podcast about it, so they know about my life anyway, so it won't shock anyone to hear this. So I was born with complications when I was born. I then was classed as having learning disabilities. When I was about between 10 and 11, they then diagnosed me with autism, and about, I'd say, 2016, 2017, I had a bit of a nervous breakdown with my mental health. But because I've been helped so much with my family and friends, and because I live with my family, obviously I can't live on my own, I've been helped all my life. I wanted to do something for other people to give back to people that were less fortunate than me, because not everybody in the world that's got a disability has what I've got. So I had to, I felt in my heart I needed to do something. I didn't know what I would do, so I talked to my support worker that said, well, I see you cycling on holidays and stuff with your family, why don't we do cycling? So for about 12 months, I practiced cycling. And in 2018, I did my first big Adam Life Events charity cycle with my support worker, which is sadly no longer here. He died, which was my one of my carers' brothers that started it with me, which is sad, really, because he was a nice bloke, but things happen. And then my other support worker, Steve, I've been with for 14 years now. He took over and helped me get further. So I went further afield. So I went from Colville to Castle Donington to Melbourne in Derby. I've done the maximum I think I've done is probably 28 miles max, and the lowest would be probably 14 miles I've done. And it's since then, from then to now, so you got to remember that's probably what 6-7 years I've been doing it now, since 2018 to 2025, and I've never stopped. I've always had my mum says I've always had the heart in me, because my nan was a very caring person, very close to her, and she reckons I take over from that I've got the heart there. So I've always cared about people. I've always wanted to help people, but I never quite knew how I could, because of how I was, and I couldn't do stuff on my own. But having the support and being able to do things enabled me to help others. And I've raised money for countless charities: Rainbows, Canine Partners, Leicester Brain Injuries. I've done, you name it, I've done it. There's still countless charities I need to raise money for every year. But obviously, this year I'm going to do it for your Newfoundlands, because I found you in the mental health section, and I read about you, and I thought it was amazing what you'd done and all the things you do, because obviously suffering mental health myself. This year I wanted to base it on mental health. It had to be a mental health. Last year was for disability because of my autism, and Canine Partners help disabled people, elderly and young, with the dogs to assist them in everyday life. So I wanted to do that. And then Rainbows fell into place because one of my cousin's sons died of meningitis. Now, Rainbows, as you probably know, are a massive charity. Yeah. I mean, they don't get a lot of funding either. No. But they're a massive charity, and what they do for families and children is absolutely incredible. So I tried to base it on something that I've either experienced or something that's happened to someone in my family or someone I know. So this year, obviously, I'm doing it for you because I've experienced mental health, like I told you, with my eating disorder, and then with other mental health issues I've had. So that's why I'm doing it for you. And so and then my podcast and my YouTube, that fell into place in COVID. I was bored, needed something to do, like podcasts, wanted to do something. And then it's endless. I've had famous people on, I've had non-famous people on, I've had inspiring people on. So it's been incredible. That's 3 to 2 years I've been doing that. So it's incredible. Yeah. But I appreciate, like I said to Rainbows, and I'm going to say it to you, I appreciate you allowing me to raise the money for your charity, because if I can even help one big swim for about 2 people that have got really bad mental health, that thought they weren't going to make it, and they come to you and they manage to somehow get through the swim and get to you and thank you for what you've done, at least my money will go to help fund the dogs and help fund you to carry on doing what you do.
Yeah, and appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on, mate.
Okay.
Really appreciate you coming down to Martford and seeing.
Yeah, not a problem.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Bye bye. Just to